Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Today we're going to look at an orchid problem. Some of you may have this problem and ignore it. Some of you may have it bad enough that you worry about it but still haven't done anything about it. So what problem are we talking about? That's what we're talking about. Leaf tip dieback, or my leaf tips are turning brown. Help! Now this is one of these problems where there is no one answer because it's not necessarily one problem. But I've always said, in most cases, if you've got a problem with an orchid, the problem's below ground, not above ground. It's going to be in the pot. Now this might not work because I can't remember what's going on in this pot. Yep, the problem's in the pot. Now I'm going to have to put the camera down because I need to lift this pot out and I need two hands. Get stuck inside the black pot. Right, why did I conclude immediately without any hesitation? One of the main reasons for this is insufficient hydration getting to the full plant. Why would this be? Well, again, there's not one reason, there could be many. And one of the reasons is you're not watering it enough. That's the obvious one. The other one is you're watering it too much. And your roots are starting to die. And if your root system is being lost, it can't work properly, and if it doesn't work properly, it doesn't hydrate the plant properly. So you think, oh, I'm not giving it enough water, so you give it even more and kill the roots even faster. Yeah, very few orchids die from too little water. So why did I jump to my conclusion immediately here? Where are most of the roots? They're not in the pot, are they? So that's why I have the problem. Now, let's just follow it through. I always like to back up my theories. Let's start with this leaf. Now this leaf's been cut off, so it obviously had the same problem, yeah? And again here, that's on quite an old bulb. This leaf tip is currant, and that goes down to this bulb. There's quite a few of the roots are above the media. So when I water that, a fair few of those roots are going to be dry within an hour or two. Now what about over here? We've got one here, one here. We follow those down, they're both on the same bulb. And which bulb are they on? This one. How much of the root system on that bulb is in the pot? This plant is dehydrating. Yeah? The other thing it could have been is if I'd actually got this out and the roots were quite happily in the media, but the media was still wet, having watered it some time ago, then the media's breaking down and it's staying wet too long. That can cause problems in the pot, yeah? Because the media's breaking down, it's starting to turn acidic. And as it turns acidic, the roots cannot do their job properly and they will start to rot. And they start to malfunction. They just don't work properly. So on this one, it's because it's dehydrated. Solution? Get it repotted. And I would suggest possibly smaller media so that it holds water a bit longer. Temporarily, I could just top the pot up for now, yeah, and just actually add some more media temporarily. So that's one thing. The other thing that wouldn't have shown up by looking at this pot is fertilizer burn. Quite honestly, with me, it's going to be the least likely because I don't feed my orchids very high and I don't feed them very often. Now the last feed that this one got was the low nitrogen feed because it is starting to form sheaths which will then form buds. So this isn't growing new leaves at the moment, it's starting to think about flowering. So the low nitrogen feed is what it got last time. And during the winter it hasn't been fed heavily because it's not growing. You know, what have I always said? The plant's not growing, what's it going to do with the food? So the other thing is an accumulation of feed because you're feeding the plant when it can't use it. I could be slightly guilty here. Yeah? So you're feeding the plant, it's not growing, so it doesn't absorb much of the nutrients. They go to waste, they sit in the pot. Yeah? The water dries out because you're not keeping them soaking wet because it's winter time, and your fertilizer turns back to salts basically. It turns back to solids within the media. And then next time you water it with a bit of feed, it dissolves the feed that didn't get used last time and adds it to the feed you've just watered in. You start to accumulate, yeah? That's why you flush, yeah? Every now and again you give it a flipping good soak with water. And how often do you do that in the winter when your temperatures are low? Probably not often enough. So the answer is to not put loads of feed in there in the first place. Yeah. So that was just a quick look. The other plants I'm not going to be able to get at like I did with that one. I knew I'd be able to get at least one of them. So that's that one. Now let's have a look round. Dendrobium nobile. That's not the same thing. Yeah? That's different. Because that leaf has died back, but it's almost transparent. So that's possibly got a different problem. What it is, I don't know. And this is a deciduous plant. It's going to lose these leaves in the not too distant future, but that's not natural. When a dendrobium that is of a deciduous nature loses its leaves, they tend to start to yellow all over, not in one place. So a leaf that is dying tends to change colour over the majority of the leaf, not little bits of it. Right, desperately looking round for some more. I know we've got some. Here, there's another one. And I can get at it. So let me just lift this one out, because this has got quite a few. This is a zygopetalum. Brown leaf tip. Very dying leaf. In that case, that's on a very old bulb. That leaf is dying. That's a different thing there. And another brown leaf tip here. So again, problems probably in the pot. So what's going on in this pot then? So what's going on in this pot? It's got roots. Now, this is a visual problem. When I look at this pot, it looks wet. Yeah? It's not. It's quite dry. It's quite light. So again, this one is probably dehydrating. It's not dehydrating through lack of roots, but I suspect part of the problem is the algae. But it's got roots, so what it isn't getting is enough water. It could, again, be storing up some feed that it's not using, but this is actually growing at the moment. I mean, it's pushing up a new growth here. It's got another one starting. It's got some active roots. It's got another new growth round here. It's not happy, this plant. These are not strong new growths, but they are new growths. So there is some growth going on. So, any feed ought to be used. But I suspect that's been getting too dry. You have to bear in mind there's another thing in this environment that wasn't in the other one. This one runs quite dry in the air. The humidifier has been shut down. I don't use it at all. The moisture in here is given off of the plants when I water them. And over the period of time since I moved in, the number of mounted orchids has dropped right down to hardly any. They were the ones that gave off the most moisture. Yeah. Now, because of my low temperatures, I mean it's 19 in here at the moment, that's not exactly warm for a daytime temperature. Nighttime it goes down to 15, and it tends to hover around 60–65%. It is currently 58, so it's a little low. Actually no, sorry, it's 63. I was looking at the wrong bit. Yeah, so it is, the air in here is drier. That can cause problems with plants dehydrating. Doesn't very often show as tips though. That's more likely to be dehydration from the root end rather than the top end. Now we've got some more over here. Those are cotyledons, and as you can see there are some brown leaf tips, including on that one a leaf dying right back. That's an old leaf on an old bulb. Don't confuse the two. But there's another brown leaf tip up the back there. So why would those cotyledons be dehydrating? I'll tell you why. Because they're in bark, they really need watering a bit more often. They're not getting enough water. Now I can tell that the Moriana, or is it Morelliana? I can never remember. It's one of the two. It's Moriana. They are very susceptible to wet-dry cycles. They don't like it at all. So whereas some orchids are happier with a wet-dry cycle, that one isn't. If that doesn't stay hydrated, then the leaves will crinkle. They get the very strange look about them where they almost look bubbly. They're just distorted. There's not enough hydration. I might be able to zoom in on one. There is one up the back there. I can't really see what I'm doing. That's the crinkly look on this particular type of, I nearly said Cymbidium then, cotyledon. So that leaf is not getting enough hydration. Brown tip and that crinkly bubbly thing. It looks as though it's getting too much water, but it's not getting enough. So again, because I'm keeping my plants quite dry in the winter because I don't want any rotten roots, they all get watered on the same cycle. Some plants it's not often enough, and some when I get to them they're still wet from the previous time and they miss a run. But we are coming to the end of this now. We're coming to the end of this dry in winter business, or much drier in winter, simply because the natural day lengths, are almost back up to, well, they're 11 hours plus now, so we're getting there. The orchid should now be responding and coming back into growth, and we'll have to have a look round and see how true that actually is. It needs to be true on certain plants or I'm going to lose them, whereas on others it's not so important if they're a bit slow getting going this time of year. But for some of them, if they don't start growing relatively soon, they're going to get declared as lost because they're not going to come back into growth. So we're waiting to see on that. Here's another one, look, little Oncidium one. Now that has been kept drier, yeah, because it wasn't growing much. Well, there's little new growths coming up all over the place now, but that's an old leaf and several with brown tips, so it wasn't getting watered enough. That was because it got repotted and it didn't have very good roots. Nonetheless, the plant still needed to be hydrated, and I was avoiding the water because I didn't expect the plant to be using it because it didn't have roots to soak that water up. So it was dehydrated, but not through lack of me watering it. It was dehydrated because it didn't have roots to hydrate it properly. You've got to try and work out the thing that this plant you're looking at has a problem with. You might have lots of plants. You might have some Cattleya types, you might have some Oncidium types, some Dendrobiums, Cymbidiums, you know, Cotylogenes like me, and they've all got some brown tips. They might not all have the same problem. They got the same obvious visible signs, but it might not be for the same reason on all of the plants that you've got it on. Simple answer is don't get it in the first place, and this all comes down to watering, as it so often does. Watering and feeding. If in doubt, feed light. If really in doubt and your plant's not doing much at all, then don't feed. Just give it enough water to keep it hydrated. And if you think your media is getting a bit stale, a good flush will alleviate the staleness and the acidity for a while. But basically it needs a repot. Shouldn't have left it that long, he says, being guilty of doing it many times in the past. I try not to do it so much nowadays. Anyway, so that's a video for today. It's a look at it's quite a common problem. Many people get it, and it's not always one reason. So you've just got to look into it. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, if there's a problem above ground, it stems from a problem below ground. So check your pot, check your media. Yeah, are your roots dry when they shouldn't be? Yeah. Are you watering often enough? Are you watering too often and you're losing your root system? Yeah? Okay. And I was just going to say, while I'm pointing the camera partially out of the window, for those that are interested, there's a new video on Roger's Garden and Bonsai channel, the other channel that I run. I actually did an early spring full garden update earlier today, where I went round and looked at all the shrubs, the bulbs that are out in bloom, what's growing, what doesn't look as though it's going to make it, you know, coming out the winter, some of the jobs that are going to need doing soon. So there's a video on the other channel if you're interested. And as I always say, if you get over there, if you don't know about this channel, it's called Roger's Garden and Bonsai. There's a link to it in the description of this video and all my orchid videos, and it's easy enough to find with a search. If you get over there and you quite like what you see, please subscribe if you haven't already done so. Costs you nothing. You know, if you watch the video and you get to the end, well, it can't have been that bad then, can it? Please do the thumbs up and leave a comment. Let's get that channel growing a bit as well as this one. It's never going to fly like this one does, but at least we can keep it ticking over and, you know, progress slowly but surely. So there is a video over there if you're interested. And now that my back is improving, I might take a risk and start work on some of the bonsai. The problem with the bonsai is they are heavy. And you know, you've often got to lean forward and pick up a heavy pot and things, so I'm a little iffy about doing that at the moment. My back's still not right. It's an awful lot better, but it's not right. So there we go, that's today's video, and thanks for dropping by. And don't forget, on this channel, if you're not subscribed, it would be nice if you do. I need one of those pre-recorded bits, don't I? I'm sure that's what some others do. If you're not subscribed, it would be nice if you did so. Don't forget the old thumbs up and leave a comment. I'm expecting lots of comments now saying, I've got some brown tips on my orchid and I can't work out why. Well, sometimes I can't work out why either, you know, because there are multiple reasons it could be. Sometimes it's just the air is too dry, yeah, which is often a culprit if you grow in the home. Yeah, so again, it is dehydration to a degree, but for a different reason. So anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.